Welcome back. All right, so with Gary Bettman coming out and saying that they want to start discussions on a new collective bargaining agreement in January of this coming year, that's great news because the expiration of said CBA isn't until September of 2026. So there are some good signs. One thing that I didn't put on the board that I know has been talked about is the fact that a lot of players for the 2026-2027 season are putting in large amounts in terms of their signing bonuses. Signing bonuses get paid out even in the event of a lockout. So that is a sign that players want to make sure they're protected. I don't think that's a sign that we're going to see any kind of a lockout. And we had the same issue coming up to the end of the last lockout as well, where players wanted to make sure they got paid. And so signing bonuses became a big part of the contracts. I don't see that as a worrying sign that players are getting ready to hunker down because who would have told them that they need to hunker down and get ready for a lockout? Maybe their agents, but it definitely didn't come from the NHLPA head that I can see. And I think it's just naturally the way of things. You want to make sure that you're covered because the NHL has gone an entire year without hockey, 2004, 2005, and so you want to be careful, right? But the CBA does expire after the 2025-2026 season, as I said, September of 2026. We haven't had a lockout in the NHL since 2013, so I think it's in the NHL's best interest to keep that streak going. I think it's in Bettman's best interest to keep that going. This might be the last CBA he negotiates, depending on how long it is. At this point in time, this might be the last one that he does. So you want to go out on a good note. You don't want to go out with a prolonged fight with the union before you leave, right? And I think owners are pretty happy too because the relationship with the NHLPA seems to be pretty good. Bettman has a good relationship with Marty Walsh, and the owners seem to be pretty happy with how things are going because why wouldn't they be? We did see the Coyotes get relocated. Marty Walsh came out and talked about that early in 2024, and yeah, the NHL resolves that. Now, a lot of that too was NHL players didn't really want to keep playing in the mullet. They wanted to play in a bigger arena. The NHL had concerns about what it would look like if you had a playoff series being played in an arena that's really a university arena, not made for National Hockey League level crowds. So the Coyotes relocation should mean more money coming in because Salt Lake City / Utah should generate more money than Arizona. Thus, the cap rising should just continue. So the cap is, and again, this is very, very preliminary, but the NHL is saying that 92.5 million for next year is possible. That would be above that 5% threshold. They're supposed to be keeping the raises in the cap to 5% or less. A 5.1% raise in the cap is what we'd be seeing if the cap was 92.5 million next year, which the players aren't going to argue about. And I don't know that the owners are necessarily going to care either because, again, we are seeing record high revenues, well over $6 billion this past season. The NHL's making a lot of money. No, they're not making as much as baseball, basketball, and football, but they're still making a ton of cash. The NHL also headed to the 2026 Olympics. This was done, I think there's a couple reasons this was done. First off, the NHL was able to get a deal with the IOC that they liked, one where they have a little bit of say and a little bit of control over like footage and things like that from the Olympics involving their own athletes. And so going back to the Olympics is good for the NHL, but it's also great for labor peace. The players were not happy with the idea of not going to the Olympics and haven't been to the Olympics in a long time. So the NHL, allowing for the 2026 Olympics, I really think that's an olive branch from the league to the players, and also the NHL getting the kind of deal from the International Olympic Committee they wanted. Now, escrow is something to keep an eye on. So on this side of the board, I have reasons why I'm pretty optimistic when it comes to an agreement. On this side are a couple of things that maybe end up adding a hiccup to the proceedings. Escrow. It's currently down at 6%, but as recently as 3 years ago, it was at 17%. So escrow is a percentage of the paycheck that comes off, and it goes into a fund where you may get the money back, you may not. And it's sometimes a year, 2 years before you know whether or not you're getting that money back. Now, when it's 17% of your paycheck, that's a lot of money. And while, yes, NHL players make a lot of money, to have 17% of your every 2 week paycheck gone and you don't know if you're going to get it back, that's a lot. And so escrow may very well end up taking center stage at this. Maybe escrow drops to 4%. Maybe the NHLPA makes it go away. I know the NHLPA would like to see it gone. Wasn't it Panarin back in 2020 who was very outspoken on how escrow to him was a non starter? That's got to go away. So he probably wasn't very happy with the 2021. It was 2021, or was it 2020, 2021? Either way, there was a 17%. I think it went as high as 20. I don't know. The escrow got really, really high. Now it's down to 6% to close out the CBA. And while 6%, again, if you're making millions of dollars, it's still a lot of money. It's definitely better than 17%. But that's something to keep an eye on as we get into negotiations in January. And NHLPA had Marty Walsh's meeting with all the teams to discuss what the players want out of this contract. So there's the possibility that in Walsh talking to the 32 teams that maybe we find a new hiccup, something new that the players would want to talk about. But this is the perfect time to do this. Like, I think what really throws me off with this is both the union and the league being proactive. What league is this? This can't be the NHL. They always wait until, all right, so we got 5 minutes left till the CBA expires. Should we negotiate now? Fine. We don't like your deal. Okay, it's a lockout. Well, we tried. It just, that's how it feels like it works. So the fact that the NHLPA is going around, we might see some issues come up, but we have plenty of time to deal with those. So other things to talk about as well when it comes to the NHL. The NHL has discussed expanding the schedule, and I've talked about this in videos before, that the NHL is looking at an 84-game schedule. General managers don't like the imbalance in the schedule, so they don't like the fact that you may go to one city twice and maybe they only come and visit you once, that kind of thing. If you go to an 84-game schedule, it's much easier to balance out said schedule. In order to do this, they'd reduce the preseason. So you drop two preseason, I think it's two preseason games everybody drops, and you add two regular season games instead. I'm hoping that means the schedule starts earlier by about a week. That'd be great. I've talked for a long time about how the NHL schedule should start earlier than it does. I'd like to see it start, well, today's October 2nd. I think we should already be about a week into the NHL season by October 2nd, but that's just me. I know that owners aren't, excited about the idea of starting the season in September, so it is what it is. But I think most fans would be excited about losing preseason games, and most owners would be excited about losing that preseason money and adding a little more regular season money instead. LTIR tweaks. I don't think the LTIR situation is going to cause any labor disruption of any sort. Obviously, LTIR has been talked about by players, general managers, by us as fans. I think there'll be a change. I think it's going to be simple. If a player ends the season on LTIR, they have to stay on LTIR through, say, the first 3 games of the first round, or maybe the entire first round. But something like that, I think, would cause a lot of the complaining to maybe go away. And I say maybe because probably not all of it, but maybe, right? So LTIR will probably see some changes there. Deferred salary. So with the Seth Jarvis deal being where it is and everything, the NHL right away seemed to react to that in a not positive way. The idea that you can just give money out after the contract's done that's not going to count as a salary cap hit. It is a way around the cap. It is absolutely a way around the cap. And so we'll see if anything happens with deferred salary and if that goes away. I'm guessing it probably does, but the NHLPA would then probably try to negotiate something else in exchange. Maybe you take 1 year off what's required for UFA status, something like that. And the NHL and the NHLPA have negotiated on UFA and RFA stuff before. I'm sure that'll come up in this one too. I'm sure players are going to want more control earlier, and GMs and owners are going to say, we'd rather not. But again, that's a fight that the NHLPA has won before. One of the few real victories for the NHLPA over the last 3 decades has been the more liberal movement of players when it comes to free agency. And so maybe they find some kind of ground there where they can take advantage and maybe get UFA status a little bit earlier for people. But Bettman wants a deal done by next June. In fact, he wants the deal done by the time the Stanley Cup final is ready to start and he does his media availability. He wants to be able to sit down for that media availability and around the middle of June and start with, hey, by the way, we just got a CBA negotiated. We're good. And I get the feeling, too, that with record high revenues, the salary cap's going in the right direction. We're up to 32 teams. Odds are we're going to get to 34 or 36 at some point, and there's no reason to shut things down. I don't see anything on this board that I feel like the union would say, all right, we got to shut things down because we want this. And I don't see anything on the board that the NHL would say, well, we need to shut things down because we want this. And in every single instance prior to this, when there's been a lockout, there's been that instance where we want a salary cap. No, that wiped out a whole season. And then the owners decided we want to take that salary cap and bring it down from the players getting 57% of the pie to 50%. And the players fought to stay at 57 and ultimately lost. And there were other reasons going into that as well. But my point stands. I don't see anything major. I mean, escrow is going to get brought up. It's going to be talked about. But I don't know that there's players that would be saying, all right, rather than lose 6% on escrow next season, I just won't make money because we're going to get locked out. So, again, that's where we're at. But I'm optimistic that labor peace will reign. It will continue. I said the same thing before the CBA was extended in 2019 and 2020. So, and by which I mean I did videos talking about it in 2019 and 2020 and how I believe there'd be labor peace. And I still think that's going to be the case. So let me know your thoughts. Lockout or no in 2026? Do you think it does or doesn't happen? And why? So if you're going to say there'll be a lockout, what would the reason be for a lockout? What would the reason be if the players said we're going to go on strike, right? Which hasn't happened since 1995. Was it 94 or 95? No, actually, that was 92. At any rate, the players went on strike once. I think it was for like 10 days. After that, it's been lockouts, just lockouts. So I can't see there being a strike, but could there be a lockout? You never know. I don't think there will be. I'm going to say labor peace again. But let me know your thoughts. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't already done so. Thank you guys so much for all your support as always. I will talk to you again soon.